The air was thick with tension as I stumbled onto a path I had never seen before, my heart racing like a drum in my chest. It was late afternoon, the sun casting long shadows through the trees, and I felt an instinctive urge to turn back, but curiosity held me in place. I was deep in the heart of the Chattahoochee National Forest, where the wind whispered secrets through the leaves, and the only sounds were the distant calls of birds and the rustling of branches. I had come here to hunt, but the woods felt different today. It was October 15th, 2022, and I had taken a few days off work to hunt in my favorite spot. The thrill of tracking game through the crisp air was intoxicating, especially since I hadn't bagged anything in weeks. But as I walked along the narrow trail, my senses heightened. I started to feel that crawling sensation of being watched. It wasn't a new feeling for me. I had spent enough time in the woods to know that it could play tricks on your mind. But this was different. A primal fear that gnawed at my gut, urging me to leave. Despite my hesitation, I pressed on, the path winding deeper into the trees, where the light barely penetrated. The deeper I went, the more I became aware of my surroundings, how quiet it was, too quiet for the forest. Then, I noticed something strange, a faded piece of orange fabric fluttering from a branch like a warning flag. It wasn't uncommon to find markers from other hunters, but this looked old and tattered, frayed like it had been there for years. That's when I noticed the ground. There were boot prints, fresh ones leading away from the path into the thicket. I hesitated, glancing back at the way I had come. The trail was beginning to feel less like an adventure and more like a trap. Still, I followed the footprints, a morbid curiosity pushing me forward. Each step felt heavier than the last as the shadows seemed to close in around me. What drove me deeper into the forest was the faint sound of something moving ahead, rustling leaves and snapping twigs that pulled at my attention. I couldn't see anything, but I could almost feel the presence of another unknown source lurking just beyond my view. As I turned a corner, I stumbled upon a clearing I didn't expect. In the middle of it stood a dilapidated cabin, its windows boarded up and walls covered in grime. An overwhelming sense of dread washed over me, but again I felt compelled to investigate. The door hung crooked on its hinges, creaking softly as I nudged it open with my rifle. The interior was dark, musty, and filled with the scent of decay. Old newspapers littered the floor, yellowed and brittle, and a chill settled in my bones when I noticed a pair of worn boots left by the door a size too big for mine. I couldn't shake the feeling that the cabin had been occupied recently. Cautiously, I stepped inside, the boards creaking underfoot. There was a rusty hunting knife on the table, alongside an open tin can of beans half full. My mind raced with possibilities. Who had been here? Why did they leave in such a hurry? Suddenly, I heard a noise from outside, a deep rumble that vibrated through the floor, causing my heart to skip a beat. It sounded like an engine, but it was too far away to make out. I decided it was time to leave, the unease creeping into my bones like a winter chill. But as I turned to exit, something caught my eye, a small trapdoor hidden beneath a grimy rug. Out of sheer curiosity, I bent down to lift it, and the stench of damp earth and something far worse wafted up, threatening to suffocate me. I hesitated, then pulled it open. The darkness yawned wide beneath me, and I could only see the glint of a few rusted chains. There was no telling what lay below, but I knew I wasn't equipped to handle whatever it was. Just as I was about to close it, I heard the distant sound of footsteps approaching. Panic surged in my chest, and I snapped the door shut, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I backed away from the door, my mind racing as I glanced around for an escape. That's when I saw it, a figure standing in the doorway of the cabin, silhouetted against the fading light. It was large, too large for a normal person, and as they stepped into the cabin, even the fading light felt intimidated, retreating from this new presence. I froze, unable to move as the figure advanced toward me. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my legs felt like lead. I barely noticed when it spoke, a low, gravelly voice that sent chills down my spine. Thought you could wander these woods alone without consequence, huh? It was a question, but it felt more like a threat. I realized I was standing in the presence of someone who had claimed this territory, someone who was done playing games. Before I could respond, panic gripped me, and I bolted for the cabin door, throwing it open just as the figure lunged forward. I didn't look back, adrenaline propelling me forward through the clearing and onto the path. Branches whipped at my face, and I stumbled over roots as I ran, hearing the footsteps behind me gaining ground. The trail I had once followed so confidently now felt twisted and alien, an unwelcome maze as darkness descended. Every instinct told me to keep going, to escape whatever was hunting me, but my lungs burned and my legs ached. I could hear the figure behind me, roaring as though to taunt me, pushing me to run faster. Then, in my desperation, I took a wrong turn, veering off into a thicket that engulfed me in its grasp. I frantically tried to find my way back, my sense of direction lost in the darkening woods. I paused for a moment to catch my breath, clutching my rifle tightly. My heart raced as I listened intently for the sound of footsteps, the low growl of the figure chasing me. I thought I could hear the crunch of leaves just beyond my view, and my eyes darted around the darkness, desperate for something, anything familiar, but all around was nothing but shadows and the echo of my pounding heartbeat. Then I saw it, a faint glow ahead, like a beacon of hope piercing through the darkness. I struggled through the underbrush toward it, thinking it might be another cabin, or even a campsite. The closer I got, the more I realized it was a fire pit. The ashes were cold, but remnants of charred wood lay scattered about, and I felt a fleeting sense of relief wash over me. But my relief was short-lived. As I scanned the area, a series of makeshift markers caught my eye. Pieces of fabric and animal bones tied to trees forming a crude circle around the fire. My stomach churned, and a wave of nausea crashed over me. This was no campsite. I had stumbled upon a ritual site, and whatever had existed here had left its marks, warnings etched into the forest floor. With my heart racing, I decided it would be best to get out of the area as quickly as possible. I turned to leave, but that's when I heard it again, the unmistakable sound of footsteps crunching twigs behind me. I didn't dare look back, the fear of what I might see paralyzing. Instead, I took off again, running through the underbrush, driven by pure instinct. I burst through the thicket and onto the main path, relief momentarily flooding my senses as I remembered my way back. The cabin loomed in the distance, dark and foreboding, but I kept my eyes forward. I could almost feel the breath of the figure on my neck, its presence haunting my every step. As I neared my truck parked at the edge of the woods, I finally felt a sense of safety, but it was short-lived. My gut clenched as I reached the truck. It was untouched, but the feeling of being watched returned with a vengeance. The night was deepening, shadows stretching longer, and the chilly air felt more oppressive. I fumbled with my keys, adrenaline still pumping, as I finally managed to unlock the door. Just as I got inside, I noticed something that froze my blood. There was something in my rearview mirror. A faint outline stood just outside the tree line, a dark figure watching me from the shadows. My heart sank as I turned the key in the ignition, desperate to escape this nightmare. As the engine roared to life, I glanced back one last time, and what I saw turned my blood to ice. The figure raised its hand, pointing, just like a predator sizing up its prey. Then, without a sound, it stepped back into the darkness, leaving behind only a sense of dread. I sped away from the forest, the gravel spitting up behind me as I took the turns faster than I ever had before. My mind raced with the memory of that night, the feeling of being hunted, of something lurking just